Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to be speaking about something that exists in the silence of our words and in the silence of our families. Imagine carrying a suitcase filled not with clothes, but with the invisible pain and grief of your ancestors' unhealed wounds. This is generational trauma. It's not just a memory of the past, but it's a whisper in our thoughts, a tremble in our fears, and a shadow in the way we love and live. If we don't recognize it, it doesn't just stay within us, but it ripples through time, finding a home in those that come after us. Imagine a glass vase. If it falls and shatters, you can see the damage, the sharp edges, the missing pieces. That's what personal trauma feels like. Now imagine you pick up those pieces and glue them back together. The cracks you can still see. That's generational trauma. The vase still holds its shape, still functions, but the cracks remain. They slowly weaken over time under the weight of new burdens. And one can go as far as saying that it becomes part of your DNA. In fact, several studies have been done to this effect. Science says trauma doesn't just live in our memories, but in our bodies. Epigenetics refers to how your behavior and environment can cause changes that affect how your genes work. Unlike mutations, epigenetics are reversible and do not alter the sequence of your DNA basis. But what they can do is affect how your body reads and reacts to this genetic information. Research in epigenetics shows that because trauma can alter your gene expression, it doesn't just affect those who experience it, but their children and their grandchildren. Dr. Rachel Yehuda's studies found that Holocaust survivors' children have lower cortisol levels, making them more vulnerable to stress and anxiety. And Dr. Moshi's research in 2005 on stress reactivity across generations showed that trauma in early life chemically modifies your DNA, actually then leading to inherited stress responses. These findings highlight how trauma leaves biological marks that then affect future generations. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a girl. Let's call her Layla. Layla never understood why she wakes up some nights with her heart racing, or why she flinches when people raise their voices. What she doesn't know is that her grandfather, he fled his home as a child, running barefoot along the roads as the sound of explosions filled the air. He never spoke of it. But his fear, it wove itself into the family like a silent heirloom. Imagine a young man. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel always grew up hearing, work twice as hard, or never show weakness. He never questions it. It's just the way things are, right? But what he doesn't realize is that his great-grandmother was once a housemaid. Forbidden from dreaming beyond her station, her fear of failure passed down the family like an unwritten rule. And finally, there's Maya. Maya never understood why her mother never said, "I love you." Why affection feels foreign, something earned rather than given. What she doesn't know is that her mother's parents never said it either. Not because they didn't love her, but because they grew up in homes where survival was the #1 priority. These fictional scenarios, they're not just stories, but they're echoes that live in all of us. So as you can see, trauma can shape our lives in ways we don't always recognize. It can show up as cycles of addiction, emotional distance, and even criminal activity. In fact, 90% of juvenile offenders and 97% of incarcerated adults have history in childhood trauma, or at least just come from unstable homes. A clear example of this is serial killer Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. Richard grew up in a highly unstable environment, exposed to negative influences at an early age. His home life was highly troubled. As he grew up, he got addicted to substances and, of course, engaged in criminal activities. Experts and investigators have linked his behavior to the extreme trauma that he experienced as a child. Richard was then sentenced to death in 1989 after being convicted of 13 counts of murder. Ramirez's case, along with the overwhelming statistics of trauma and crime, they show us how important it is to address trauma early for stability and, of course, reducing the world's crime rate. But how about this? Trauma might be inherited, but so is resilience. This is called the power of healing. We are not doomed to repeat the past. Healing starts when we decide to become the ancestors we wish we had. This healing, it comes in many different forms. You have personal healing, which is basically like therapy, whether it's body-based therapy, journaling, self-compassion. All of these can help us rewrite the stories we've been given. And then you have family healing. Family healing starts when you decide to break the silence. Simply just sitting down with your loved ones and asking them, what was your childhood like? Or what fears do you carry? Can turn this generational trauma into generational wisdom. And finally, there's community healing. Because trauma might be collective, so can healing. Movements for justice, reclaiming lost traditions, and telling your histories truthfully all contribute to breaking these cycles of pain. But all of this is a legacy of strength. Generational trauma is real, but so is generational strength. Our ancestors, they didn't just pass down their wounds. They passed down their love, their laughter, their songs. The fact that we are all here today means they endured, and we are proof of their survival. So now ask yourself, what legacy do you want to pass on? Imagine a world where our children inherit not just our wounds, but our courage, where they don't just survive trauma, but they turn it into wisdom and into love. Breaking the chains is not easy, but it definitely is possible, and it starts with all of us. Thank you.